It seems that you enjoy making bookmarks as much as I do. I made a film last week about these little landscape bookmarks, and over 20,000 people have watched it already, which is just a bit crazy. So I thought I would make another one about these little floral, oops, there are 4 of them, floral bookmarks, just as an alternative in case you're not a landscape sort of person. They are great for using up leftover bits of paper, leftover bits of paint, and of course they make a great gift. But beyond that, they also are good for trying out new techniques, new colour combinations, a bit of line and wash, stuff like that. Much as they're lots of fun, you do learn a lot as well. My name's Liz Chatterton. I'm a watercolour artist based in Berkshire, and every week I share a tip and a trick that I wish I'd known about ages ago. And this week it is watercolour bookmarks. All you need for this project is a small strip of paper cut to size. If you want rounded corners, you might want to use something like this. If you're going to put a tassel on, you might want a hole punch. Tassels are optional, but who doesn't love a tassel? You need a bit of leftover paint or colour to try out, and I'm doing line and wash, so you'll need some waterproof fine liners. I've got a set of them in all different widths, but if you've only got one pen, I'd have said something like a 0.2 or a 0.3 would be pretty good as one to go for. I've taped down 4 bits of paper, and in this case it is some Paul Rubens sparkly watercolour paper that I've just cut into slices. You can actually get bookmark pads like this from Hannah, which are really nice. They're already cut to size for you, and it's very nice 100% cotton paper, so it behaves beautifully. That's entirely up to you. I like doing bookmarks because it gives me a chance to experiment with some new colours, and I have just bought some very pretty new colours from Rosa, and that one is a Madder Rose. Look at the colour on that. And this one is Magenta Rose, so I would like to try those. So you can experiment with some of new colours, or of course you can use it as a chance to clean up palettes so that you're not wasting some colour. So I might use some of that purple. I think that tiny splodge there is a bit of mineral violet. That's Purple Lake maybe. And I'm just going to put some splodges basically and let the colours do their own thing. Could as well, just have to be careful you don't splodge something that you don't want splodging. Do some little splatters. If you are concerned, it doesn't matter because this is also going to be a pink and purple one. Just sort of cover it up and do some sort of loose pattern. It can be a lot harder than you think, just a splodge colour. It's not funny. I don't want to go too dark, simply because I'm going to do pen work on top of here, and of course it might struggle. Worth taking any excess off the tape around the sides just to help the drying process. If you fancy it, you could sprinkle some salt into the background. We're trying to make an interesting loose background, so let's do that. Now I'm going to let those dry naturally. These washes have now dried. Way to tell is to use the back of your hand. If it still feels cool, it means that there's water in the paper and you need to dry it more. If it feels normal, it means it's dry. So I'm just going to rub off those bits of salt that we put on there. So what I thought we'd do is use fine liners, and I've got a set from a Hoo that I have done a review on. I'll put a link, and they come in all different widths, so that's useful. And I thought we'd use basically black waterproof pens to do different florals on these backgrounds. And I'm going to start with something quite simple and stylized, and then something more realistic, just to give you a full range. You need inspiration. Go to somewhere like Pixabay, click the bit that says illustration rather than photograph, and it will come up with all sorts. Yeah, I suggest using a waterproof pen just in case at the end you change your mind and you want to add something a bit more. So let's start. You can of course use pencil to get you going, but I'm just going to be brave, and we'll start with a few stems. Now I'm going to use that brush pen to put in leaves. What should we do? If you haven't got a brush pen, of course, just use a thicker pen out of your set and then sort of colour in and fill in the leaves, or just do outlines. You could use a thinner pen to touch up anything. And this one up here, we could do a different, let's use a different one. Slightly different style of leaf. And I think doing these bookmarks is just great fun for practicing your mark making and getting confidence in using your ink pens, changing the widths of your marks, or noticing how they vary depending whether you start at the top and come down or start at the bottom and go up. And so it's just an opportunity to play and see what you can do. What this is, almost like a lavender or something like that. Let's thicken it up. It's a slightly thicker line, and I'm going to make these a little more leafy rather than linear. I think it's quite nice to have things crossing over as well. So that's quite a simple botanical. I might come back in with some paint marker and put some more dots or put a bit of metallic, I'm not sure. So I have got a 0.5 here, and I'm going to do some tall stylized flowers. You can just let your imagination wander and come up with some ideas, or as I say, you can always go on Pinterest or Pixabay or any of those sort of online to get some ideas and a little bit of inspiration. Just try not to make things too even and symmetrical. So maybe have some things going off. Think about having odd numbers as well. Let's try something a little more drawing-y. Is that such a word? I think it's a good idea to really match the size of your line to the size of your paper and to the size of the shape that you are doing. Do carry your lines over your tape. That's the whole point of having the tape here. And then you won't get that sort of artificial stop at the end. I think 3s are always quite nice as a number, because in the end these aren't terribly big bits of paper, so I think 3 is quite a fun number to put of these. And you might want to use, so that was a 0.3 that I was using. Let's grab that 0.7. Now you might want to thicken up some of the lines. Yeah, just put a little few marks and texture on the stem there. I found this little illustration of a fuchsia, which is really appropriate to the colours we've got here. Again, if you want to, just put pencil line as guidance, but I'm just going to go straight in with some pen, because why not? This is that 0.3 again. So these are the lovely ballerina flowers we used to call them when I was little. I'm not exactly, or I'm not copying this illustration exactly. I'm just trying to get the feel of it. You can take into account the background pattern or ignore it totally. That is rather up to you and what your background's doing. Now I've got these paint markers. I did a review of them, so if you haven't seen that, you might enjoy it. And I think, oh, actually silver, wouldn't that be nice? Why don't I just tip them all out? Oh, let's see, there's the silver. So paint markers just need a good shake to mix up the paint. And then you might have to pump action a little to get it to flow. But I'm finding with these ones that it just flows really nicely straight away. So let's put some dots just to brighten things up. You could use a gel pen if you've got coloured gel pens. That would be a thinner mark. You could just use a little bit of gouache and a very thin paintbrush if you've got a nice steady hand. This one. Do that one. I think I might leave that one alone. Actually, and you can layer on top of the marker once it's dry. Because these are acrylics, you can just layer on top. It's then waterproof. You could put watercolour over the top, or in this case I'm just adding a few little bits. So once you're happy with the end result, carefully remove the tape. If you have any suspicions it is going to stick and rip your paper, just warm it gently with your hairdryer and that will just loosen the glue so that you don't rip your paper. If, as I've got here, some of the paint has seeped under into the edges, I've got a couple of options. I could get a very sharp knife and potentially scrape it off, or I could use my paint marker and touch it up, just be enough to disguise where it has seeped under that tape. So now we can finish them off. If you have a rounding punch like this, you can round the corners off, which I quite like doing. These punches you can get online just from card making or scrapbooking supplies. They're not very expensive. Then we need to put the all-important hole for the tassel. You can measure it or you can eyeball it. I bought these tassels online. They were an utter bargain. I got 100 for £4.99. So you can decide, maybe that one would be nice with the one that we put the little silver bits on. Maybe a white tassel. Bring out the purple in one of them. Before you put the tassels on, you might want to seal these, because the concern is if, I don't know, someone's reading a book in the bath, it gets wet and the watercolour is going to go all over the book. Some people laminate them and just put them through an ordinary plastic laminator. You can get book sleeves. I don't like either of those as an option. What I prefer to do is to wax them. Now you can use Dorland's wax, which is a fine art product. It comes from America. It's made by, oh gosh, who is it? Jacquard? Yes, Jacquard. Really gorgeous. Is relatively expensive, but you hardly need any for this. Or you could use a clear wax. This is an Annie Sloan. It's designed to go on chalk paint, but it works in exactly the same way. And given that these are not exactly fine art products, then I would go for this, because that big tin is about, oh, I don't know, £15 and would wax about 3 million bookmarks. All you do is get a little on a cloth, your fingers. If you are prone to eczema or anything like that, I really would suggest using a cloth. I just like the feel of it. And you rub it into your bookmark in a very thin layer, obviously checking that your bookmark is fully dry before doing this. Rub it both sides. Effectively just waterproofs and seals it. Leave it to dry, depending how thin your thin layer is. It might dry in an hour, or you can leave it overnight. Get a cloth, a lint-free cloth, and just give it a rub over, and it will effectively buff the bookmark and give it a little bit of a sheen. So the wax slightly deepens and enriches the colours as well as protecting it. And that's just a really nice way of finishing off your bookmark. Of course, finishing off, you could sign these. You could write a little message if it's for a friend. You could put a little quote, something about reading or about books. So you could always do that if you like. You could write your friend's name on it. There are lots of options there. Do anything that you want to do before you seal it, because things will not write on top of this wax properly. This is next day and I let them dry overnight. So all I need to do now is get a cloth, hold them flat, because what I don't want is to bend them, and give them a little buff like this. And the wax isn't sticky. It won't melt, it's not going to stick the pages of the book together. And I think that's a really nice way of finishing them, rather than laminating or putting them in those little sleeves that you can get. So you simply put, whoops, thread it through the hole and loop them round. Of course you don't have to put a tassel on, but I think they're really pretty, and they were such a bargain that I think that makes just a really nice sort of finish to the bookmark and makes them feel a little bit more special. So there you go, four little bookmarks that can now be gifted to friends, or some people leave them inside books for the library for other people to discover, or sell them, or whatever, from something that anyone can do, whether they say they can't draw or not, to something that will help you practice a bit of your line and wash work. It's just a lovely way to use up leftover paint or to experiment with new paints to see how they behave.